speaking at Audience Communications shortly. If you would need an agenda, agendas can be found just outside the room on the table or the counter right outside the door. If you're watching from home and you'd like an agenda, you can find them online at www.livoniapublicschools.org. If you hover over the board tab, you can drop down to the agenda and follow along with us this evening. Looks like it might be one of our shorter meetings of the year, but who knows? I may have just jinxed that. This is a regular voting meeting, and by that, the items that will come before the board tonight have been discussed typically at least 2 other meetings. Therefore, you may or may not see the amount of discussion that you would expect at a board meeting before we vote on an item. But the reason for that is because they've been talked about typically at least twice before you're seeing them tonight. So we've kind of talked them to death by this point, and we're ready to take some votes on them. Of course, board members are certainly still free to feel free to comment, have questions, etc. But if you're looking for more conversation, more questions and answers about the items coming before the board, I encourage you to tune into the Committee of the Whole meetings. Those can also be found on our website where you found the agendas under the school board tab. At the Committee of the Whole meetings, we have a lot of discussion. Sometimes they get lengthy, so bring a cup of coffee. But we have a lot of discussion, a lot of question and answer. At times we can ask the administration for more information, all in preparation for a meeting such as tonight. Mr. Centers, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
Gladly.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is communications, item 3, and the introduction of our interim superintendent, Superintendent Andrea Oquist. We are very, very fortunate in Livonia Public Schools. We have had a terrific superintendent for the last 12 years, Dr. Randy Liepa, who has gone on to be the superintendent of Wayne Risa. And we are equally blessed that we have a wonderful individual who is capable of taking this interim position of superintendent. Andrea Oquist is known to most folks in our community. She has been a teacher in our district. She's been the principal of Hoover and Taylor, I believe, both. She has most recently served as the Director of Elementary Education for the district, and she has agreed to step into this position on an interim basis and serve as our interim superintendent while our board searches for a permanent replacement for Dr. Liepa. We are thrilled to have Mrs. Oquist. She and her family live in the community. Her kids have gone to school here, so lots of folks already know you. Joining us this evening is also Mrs. Oquist's family, so we give them a special welcome. But we, as a board, thank you, Mrs. Oquist, so very much for stepping into this really, really vital role while we search for a permanent replacement for Dr. Liepa. And we officially welcome you, even though you've been on the job for a few weeks, we officially welcome you as the interim superintendent of Livonia Public Schools.
Thank you. Thank you so much, President Burton. I'll just say a couple of words. I certainly want the board to know and the community to know that you have my unwavering commitment to this role. I love our school district, and I'm so proud of what we do here each day. One of the reasons that I can take on this role and also serve in wear my other hat as well up on the second floor is really 2 groups of people I'd like to acknowledge here this evening. I was going to say one group to my right, but no one is there, so I'm not sure if that's a sign. But my cabinet colleagues and Jill Wozniak, and my partner in crime on the second floor, Cindy Herbeck, who really do work tirelessly on behalf of the students and of the staff, and they have been a tremendous, tremendous support and partner with me. And I'd like to introduce my family here this evening. I don't know if we can capture them on camera. I don't know how much they'd enjoy that. I'd like to introduce my parents, Eunice and George Begaris, who are both proud retirees of Livonia Public Schools. And so I'm so proud to carry on that legacy. They also increase our viewership each week for the board meeting,
and we count on
which
that.
is quite important. 2 of the most generous-hearted people you would ever meet. My wonderful husband, Jeff, who agreed to transplant here after we met from Peachtree City, Georgia, and come to very chilly Michigan and raise our children and our family in Livonia. And my beautiful children, who I just adore, my daughter, Olivia, who is a graduate of Livonia Public Schools and a future elementary educator. and our son Alexander, who's going to be a senior at Stevenson. And we are looking forward to an exciting year ahead from him. So I get to start and end my day with some pretty great people, and in between, also have a tremendous team to work with here. So thank you so much for your confidence, and I'm so proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Oquist. As is customary with our Board of Education, when we have folks who are coming into new positions, and we officially welcome them to the community at this time, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute recess so that we can congratulate our honoree this evening, Mrs. Oquist. So at this time, our board will recess for 5 to 10 minutes, and you can rejoin us at that time. We are at recess. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back from our brief recess of the August 17th, 2015 regular meeting of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education. If you're following along on your agenda, we are now at item 3B, audience or written communications. Do any members of the board have any written communications they'd like to share? No? Alrighty. Next item is 3C, audience communications. This is the time of our meeting when the board sets aside a time to hear from members of the community. They may speak to us on any topic that they wish. We do ask that each speaker respect the rule of limiting themselves to 3 minutes, and that is so that everybody has a chance to speak and be heard equally. Also, it is a time that the board will be hearing from members of the community. This is not a question and answer session. It is a time for us to listen and for the community to speak to us. The first person that I have for audience communication is Dawn Cummings. Dawn, would you like to approach the podium?
Good evening. My name's Dawn Cummins, and I am a parent of a student athlete at both Frost and a 3-sport varsity athlete at Churchill as well. I'm here tonight to voice my concerns regarding the hiring of the St. Mary's Mercy as a provider for the athletic training services for all 3 of the Livonia high schools. I'll begin by stating, while I understand the necessity for periodic evaluation of contracts for budgetary purposes, I firmly believe that this instance, the nature of the service that is being provided should have been given the utmost consideration. MedSport has been the athletic service provider for approximately 12 years. The trainers have established invaluable relationships with the athletic directors, the coaches, and most importantly, the athletes themselves. These athletes rely on the trainer to assess, treat, and monitor any injuries, as well as take care of any chronic health conditions in relation to physical activity. As a registered nurse myself, I cannot begin to stress enough the importance of providing a continuity of care while establishing trusting relationships. This is an essential component of effective care. This type of relationship was developed and solidified between the LPS and MedSport trainers that have been at these facilities for all these years. This fall at Churchill alone, there are over 400 student athletes. Beginning on August 10th, mandatory full contact practices began for football. In addition, soccer, volleyball, cross country, swimming, cheer, and pom, to name a few, also began their fall seasons. These initial weeks are a very intense, formidable time for these athletes. Beginning today, the 17th of August, the trainer dedicated to CHS by St. Mary's is a certified, brand new graduate of Michigan State with no experience in this magnitude of a situation. This is her first job. Her credentials could be impeccable, but the hands-on experience, she doesn't have any. She is beginning today, and this is after 6 full, 2-a-day full contact practices for football alone. She has no knowledge of the athletic programs and protocols, the standards of care, or any of the athletes' histories. In no way is this beneficial to our athletes. The RFP for the athletic training services was initiated by the board was approved on July 27th, 5 days after the bids were due, which was July 22nd. That's just 13 days prior to the beginning of the fall athletic season. The winning bid, presented by St. Mary Mercy, was for $1.80 less hourly than the bid from MedSport. This was clearly strictly a financial decision. Based upon the nature of the services provided, there should have been extensive research, conversations with athletic directors, and careful consideration before making this determination. From an outsider's perspective, this bid approval was an expedited process. It seems insufficient attention was given to the importance of the specifics. I understand that change in this is a necessity. However, in this instance, I firmly believe that this issue was not given adequate consideration. The value of exceptional care, solid relationships, and optimal safety for our student athletes far exceeds the $1.80 hourly savings. Going forward, I would hope that the members of the board would take into consideration the health and safety of our young athletes, giving their well-being the top priority over insignificant monetary savings. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Oquist, will you respond back to Mrs. Cummings on behalf of the board?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. The next person who would like to speak at audience communications is Jody White.
I want to introduce, my name's Jody. Here's the people I'm going to be talking about, just so you know. I'll get like that back. I have 2 police reports also that I can get you a copy of that I'd like to talk to you about. I actually wanted to talk to the board members, but I guess I should probably start with the new interim superintendent. I was expecting a date to talk to the school board meeting again, exclusively pertaining to the merits to these situations. Our school has 2 police reports. I don't know if you know that. And one of them includes my son, which is about a 9th grade girl, and the other one's 2 9th grade girls also. And so these girls are coming from other districts of ours. I know you can see that family photo nicely portraying our Livonia city, which isn't really pleasant. I am really going to just stick to my speech because we all have a soul and can self-govern ourselves. But if leadership sits in position and chooses to see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil when a parent is asking for help, then it will be time to re-educate the public on why we have rules or even a school board. I understand you, I hope you understand that parents, we want public servants, not public puppets, especially superintendents that get paid over $200,000 and didn't address our situation. We have seen the administrative staff create new and abused definitions of policy that have already well written and found in the student handbook of 2014 and 2015. I'm humbly coming back to you to have the facts looked at directly with my evidence by merit, not by hearsay, from Dana Winnery, John Raymond, Keith McDonald, Lyndon Lewis, and Officer Hess to clear the chaos and havoc that's been coming to our family. So I don't know how much you know. I do know I've met with most of the people here. I gave paperwork, and it's been returned back to me. So I'd like to make sure you get a copy of it. I believe that Mrs. Bird, Randy Leopold, and Stephen Archibald are also involved behind the scenes. The school board president has allowed Randy Leopold to leave, and on air, our president had stated that she didn't mandate him to investigate anything. He never even looked at any of our paperwork, so I don't know what investigation is. I'd like to quote from page 17 of the student handbook that it says that when conducting an investigation, shall document all reported incidents, shall report. The next paragraph says, shall submit a compiled report to the board on an annual basis. He's now gone, so I'm assuming the annual season is over. So I'm assuming you have a copy of this compiled report, which I'd like to see a copy of, because I sure want to see these 2 police reports. I think that's pretty pertinent. And the last one, it says that the superintendent is responsible for implementing this policy. So our 1999 governing board of elected board members put this out for us to protect us. Mr. Johnson, you weren't supposed to be here during the hiring meeting. You were able to sit over there and take off your lower hat and take off your council hat and play a game with a concerned parent about your behavior as the elected official who should have understood a simple order not to be here as a council president.
Excuse me, Mrs. White, you've reached your 3 minutes if you can conclude.
The bulletin policy can be, I've been really patient. I'm going to try to finish up. I have about 3 more paragraphs.
I'm sorry, Mrs. White, I do have to ask respectfully that you will allow us to enforce our 3-minute rule.
We now need to know what's going on, Miss New Superintendent. So, obviously, they're not going to let me do it, but the people around here like to write letters.
Mrs. White.
Are you going to call the police on me?
Mrs. White, I am asking you to
And I'm asking
obey
you for a truthful nature of conduct from you.
Mrs. White,
I'm expecting a phone call from the new superintendent.
Obey the 3-minute limit that we have on all citizens.
Okay, so are you going to make sure that I have a meeting with the new superintendent? As the council president, you've been elected. Is that a yes or a no?
Mrs. White,
I can't leave again. April, May, June, July, August.
May we have some assistance, please?
Are you going to be able to get a hold of me?
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Archibald, Mr. Dana, can I talk with them then out there?
You are happy to talk with administration. Thank you.
I have all the evidence here. So we can move
For the benefit of the public,
Go ahead, I'm going to stay if you're going to speak about me.
Mrs. White, I respectfully ask that you obey the 3-minute limit that we have on all citizens. Thank you. For the benefit of the public, I would like it known that this issue has been investigated and has been communicated on numerous occasions between Livonia Public Schools and the White family. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is response to prior audience communication, which is item 3D. I do not have any response to prior audience communications at this time. The next item on our agenda is item 4, consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Bonnefield.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the regular meeting of July 27, 2015. 5B, minutes of the special meeting of July 27, 2015. 5C, minutes of the closed session of July 27th, 2015. 7A, bills for payment August 18th, 2015. 7B, approval of 2015-2016 tuition rate.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Laura. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you, President Burton. Last Friday, I sent an email to Ms. Abby and copied everyone about an expense for iBoss network security. And I didn't hear back, and I asked Mrs. Abby prior to the meeting, and she said she was looking for direction from Mrs. Burton. But anyway, Mrs. Abby, you don't have to worry about it. I found it on my phone. It was approved June 22nd.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments on the consent agenda items? All right, seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mrs. Laura. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. And if we can have a closed session minutes passed down, please. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 6, instruction matters, and we will be hearing from Mrs. Alice on the summer academic program update.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, President Burton. Good evening, everyone. I am pleased this evening to have an opportunity to share with the board some wonderfully rewarding summer programs that occurred and one that is still occurring this week in our district to support our elementary and secondary students. And I have a slideshow to share with you this evening. Livonia Public Schools has developed 4 summer learning programs for our students that you're going to hear about tonight. 3 of these programs, they are Camp Frost, Camp Emerson, and the Franklin Focus, are designed for students who attend our 8 Title I schools. They include Garfield, Hayes, Cleveland, Rosedale, Roosevelt, Cooper, Johnson, and Emerson. The funds for these 3 summer programs come from our Title I budgets. The 4th program you're going to hear about is Students Helping Students Literacy Program. That is designed for our exiting kindergarten and first grade students, and it supports them in their literacy development. I'm going to give you a peek at each of these programs. We're going to begin with the program that services our youngest students, that's our exiting kindergarten and first graders, and then we're going to move up through the grades. So the first program is our Students Helping Students Literacy Program. This is a partnership that Livonia Public Schools has with Madonna University and the Kurt Foundation. It began 7 years ago. And in this summer program, the Madonna University students tutor our kindergarten and first grade students from any of our K-4 schools in both reading and in writing. This summer, we had 22 first graders and 23 second graders, or 22 exiting kindergartners and 23 exiting first graders, who attended 2-hour sessions at Garfield Elementary School. Classes were held Monday through Thursday for 3 weeks, beginning on July 13th and running through July 30th. This year, we had 8 of our students who returned for a second year in the program. We have many families who send their siblings to the program, which is a wonderful testament and tribute to the Students Helping Students Literacy Program, that families are sending another child or having a child repeat the program. The tutors at Madonna University are graduate students who are working on their master's degree in literacy, or they are undergraduate students who are ready to begin their student teaching practicum. Each morning, students gather in the Media Center for a whole group lesson in literacy. Tutors then meet with their assigned students, and they're usually in groups of 2 to 4. They provide a small guided reading lesson where the emphasis is placed on phonemic awareness, on phonics, on word study using the district's adopted Words Their Way program, on comprehension skills, and on oral reading fluency. Students write daily in response to the whole group literacy lesson that occurred at the beginning of the day, or they write in response to the guided reading lesson that they had with their tutor. Instruction is guided by a one-to-one assessment that tutors conducted the week before the program began. The tutors then use the results of that assessment to plan their lessons and guide their instruction. At the conclusion of the program, the one-to-one assessment is administered again to the students, and parents receive the pre- and post-assessment results at the end of the program, as well as those assessment results are then shared with this year's classroom teacher. At the end of the 3 weeks, parents are provided a survey to complete, and parents are asked to evaluate the literacy needs of their students being met, as well as the overall effectiveness of the program. Here we see some of the resources that are used in the program. And next I'm going to move on to our, yes?
I just want to put a plug in for this program because one of my former colleagues, Margaret Kulas, is a professor at Madonna and is a facilitator of this program. And she may be one of the finest educators I've ever seen. So I just know that these students who are working with our much younger students are benefiting so much, and our students are benefiting so much. So,
which is the beauty of the title of the program. It's students helping students. So it's really our students helping Madonna students and Madonna students helping our students.
That's great.
It's a mutually reciprocal process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to move on to our camps, our Camp Frost and Camp Emerson. These programs run from 4 weeks, from July 6th through July 30th. Sessions are held every Monday through Thursday. Camp Emerson is typically held at Emerson Middle School, but as you know, Emerson is undergoing significant renovations this summer. So Camp Emerson was relocated to Cooper this summer. We had 157 students who attended Camp Emerson from exiting kindergarten through 6th grade from Cleveland, Hayes, Roosevelt, and from Cooper. Camp Frost had 110 students in attendance, ranging from our exiting kindergarten through 6th grade, and these students came from Garfield, Rosedale, and Johnson. This was the first year that we had kindergarteners and first graders at Camp Frost this year. The enrollment numbers this year for both Camp Frost and Camp Emerson were at an all-time high. Transportation is provided daily for our summer campers, as we like to call them. They exited their bus at 8:30 in the morning. They were treated to breakfast in the cafeteria to fuel their minds and their bodies. The students had a 3-hour schedule each day that included a 90-minute literacy lesson. Students engaged in reading lessons that focused on their comprehension skills as well as increasing their oral reading fluency. Daily writing lessons addressed persuasive and argument writing. This is a genre that's tied directly to the Common Core standards for writing. Writing lessons were designed to increase student confidence and to increase their writing stamina. We also had instruction that was differentiated to include some small group instruction as well as one-on-one instruction based on the individual needs of the students. The use of technology was integrated into these literacy lessons. Students were blogging with their camp teachers and with their fellow campers, which is a real-world application of writing skills. Teachers reinforce what we call in school the GUM skills for writing, which include grammar, usage, and mechanics. Then in the mid-morning, all students took a break and had a snack. Students also had both an art and a PE class at Camp Emerson. At Camp Frost, students had a PE class. So we were able to provide students with a very well-rounded and a diverse summer program. Camp Frost had a special highlight this year. It was the Super Science Day that was presented by the Hands-On Ann Arbor Science Museum. Campers rotated through 10 different science experimental sessions. We kept the groups small at each rotation so that it allowed the students to have more interaction with the Hands-On Science Museum volunteer. This was really a great treat for the campers at Frost this year. The day at Camp Emerson and Frost ended with lunch before the students departed for the day. And on the last day at Camp Emerson, they were treated to a visit by the Kona Ice Truck. What a great way to celebrate the conclusion of a wonderfully rewarding summer camp program for these students. Both Camp Emerson and Camp Frost have many campers who return for a second, sometimes a third, and sometimes a fourth summer camp experience. They also have former campers who come back who are beyond the age of qualifying for the camp experience. They come back to volunteer to help in the program and also serve as student mentors in the program. Again, what a wonderful tribute to this program, that students want to come back, and even after they're no longer eligible to come back, they still want to be part of the program. A new camp experience was offered this summer, and that was to students who were attending Camp Emerson. They had an opportunity to extend their day by spending their afternoon at the Livonia YMCA. So after spending a morning at Camp Emerson, 65 of our Camp Emerson students then participated in a variety of activities that were offered at the Livonia Family Y, such as swimming, gymnastics, dramatic art, financial literacy, and many, many more. Student campers who attended the Livonia Y segment of the day did so free of charge to both families and to the Livonia Public Schools because it was funded graciously and generously by the Livonia Kids and Family Organization. And the Livonia Y provided transportation from Camp Emerson to the Livonia Y after the kids had lunch at Camp Emerson, and then at the conclusion of their afternoon provided transportation back to the students' regular drop-off site. So this was no charge to the district or to our families. The fourth summer academic program is called Franklin Focus, and because Franklin was undergoing a significant amount of renovation this year, we relocated the program to the former McKinley Elementary School site. This program provides incoming ninth grade students with an opportunity to maintain and perhaps even enhance their literacy skills. The program began on August 3rd and will conclude at the end of this week. It meets Monday through Thursday for 2 hours. This summer support class provides students with an opportunity to receive direct instruction in both reading and writing, and also how to integrate these skills into content areas. Students also use a software computer program called Write to Learn for editing their written work, and I had an opportunity to visit the program and talk to the students about it. They love the Write to Learn program because they can edit using technology rather than having to rewrite. They just go in and edit their work. So they loved that program and commented on how much more they're able to write. Their stamina is increasing and the quality of their writing is increasing using this program. So as we look at the pictures, the smiling children in this picture, and we look at the pictures in our virtual field trip through our summer programs, we can see that our students enjoyed their learning experience and had fun while they were learning. A couple of years ago, there was a Time magazine article on learning loss, and in the article, it was quoted as saying, "As educators attempt to civilize summer as an educational resource, the trick is to seize that opportunity without destroying what's best about the season, the possibility of fun, of freedom, and play. And the other key is to select strong teachers who work in small groups with excited learners." Well, I would say that our 4 summer academic programs met all of these qualities this past summer. And of course, these programs would not be possible without the dedication and commitment to many people, and I would like to thank some of them this evening. First, I'd like to thank Christine Finkel, who is our district's K-12 ELA and Social Studies coordinator, for her collaborative efforts with Madonna and the Kirk Foundation to provide the Students Helping Students Literacy program. A thank you to Phil Francis, our former federal programs coordinator, who facilitated and helped implement the Camp Frost, Camp Emerson, and Franklin Focus program. A special thank you to Art Collins and John Farkas, who were the teacher leaders at Camp Emerson and Camp Frost. To Nan Kaufman and Lauren Schnell, who provided professional development to all of the teachers at Camp Frost and Camp Emerson to ensure that they were teaching our district's literacy, math curriculum, and that they were using the instructional strategies in their delivery system that matches the instructional strategies that are occurring in our classrooms. To our transportation department for getting our children to and from camp safely. To our food services department for providing the breakfast, the mid-morning snack, and the lunch to Camp Frost and Camp Emerson. To the staff at Camp Emerson, Camp Frost, and Franklin Focus. To the staff at also the staff at the Students Helping Literacy program. To the Garfield summer staff, who allowed us to use their school and were very gracious in supporting the Students Helping Literacy program. To the Kurt Foundation for their annual funds that allow Students Helping Students to continue, and to both the Livonia Family YMCA and the Livonia Kids and Family Foundation for providing the funds that allowed our 65 campers to extend their day by having a full day of summer camp. So that concludes tonight's presentation, as well as our virtual field trip into our summer camps. These camps were designed to ensure that some of our elementary and our secondary students were able to keep their minds sharp, to stay active, to have some fun, and of course, the main purpose, to help reduce or to prevent summer literacy loss. So I thank you very much for an opportunity to share this information with you this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Burton. Mrs. Ellis, this is a wonderful program, and I'm thrilled that the enrollment was at an all-time high. Do you have an idea of how many children were in the programs this summer?
At Camp Frost, we had, I think I said 110, and at Camp Emerson, we had 157, and at Students Helping Students Literacy, we had 45.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Mrs. Bonnefield.
I just want to thank you for the program. I spent some time in our Rotary group with both Ann Owen, who's a principal over at Emerson, and Brian Wolverton, who is the executive director over at the YMCA. And we've been talking about this at our meeting and back and forth and stuff. So I hope people understand that this is something that impacts some of our more high-risk kids, and it means you make it sound like a great adventure and a fun time, but this means so much more to some of those kids. Something that they may never be able, have the opportunity to do and to learn over the summer, and it has a real impact on these learners, more than what I think anybody can really assume from your very nice talk. It really is very impactful, and all the people that participate in that program and give their time are just, it means so much, and it's just a great thing for these kids.
Thank you. I have an opportunity every summer to visit all 4 of the programs, and a repetitive comment that I get from the campers in the program is really how much they enjoy being in the camp setting, and having opportunity to be with children their own age and engage in activities that are fun and yet have a focus on learning. And the learning that occurs in a way that is really engaging to kids. So you see them interact with each other, and you can see them having fun and yet learning at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? Mrs. Alice, you mentioned that the students who participate in these programs come from the Title I buildings, I believe. Is that
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
Okay. And if parents are interested in getting their kids into these summer programs, is there a way that they can go about doing that, or are these kids chosen by the district, or is it perhaps different for the different programs?
It's different for the different programs. So the Students Helping Students Literacy Program is open to any exiting kindergarten and first grade student throughout the district. And that information is sent home typically in April. And the EST at the school is usually the contact person for signing up for the program. Camp Emerson and Camp Frost are for exiting kindergarten through 6th grade students, but only eligible in our Title I schools. And if they're interested, they should see their school's Title I coordinator facilitator. And that information usually goes home to parents in the spring of the year.
Okay, and these, let me see here.
And the Franklin Focus is through Emerson Middle School. They, the Title I facilitator at Emerson works with their English Language Arts Department chair to identify students who would be best suited for the program.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad to see that there are some opportunities where the district is identifying students that need this, but there are also some of these opportunities are open for anybody in the district whose parents might be interested in getting the children enrolled.
Except for the camp programs. Camp Emerson and Camp Frost and Franklin Focus are only, students who are in Title I schools are only eligible because the federal government allows us to use Title I funds only for Title I eligible students.
Right. So it's the Students Helping Students that is open to all district students?
Yes.
Got it.
All exiting kindergarten and first grade students.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? No? Alrighty.
Thank you very
again for your
much.
presentation.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda this evening is item 7C, approval of bid results for traffic signal and wheelchair lift for Franklin High School 2013 bond. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Laura.
Thank you. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, to approve the Franklin High School traffic signal and wheelchair lift project in the amount of $193,200 and a revised project total of $20,804,273 and authorize the interim superintendent or her designee to execute final contracts on behalf of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education.
Support. Is that Mrs. McDonald? Okay. We have a motion by Mrs. Laura, supported by Mrs. McDonald. And Ms. Abby, would you like to address this?
I would. Good evening. This approval of this bid tonight is part of the overall Franklin construction and renovation project. As you know, we have brought most of those bids to you already earlier in the year, because if we hadn't, we wouldn't be working out there all summer as we have been, which, by the way, project's going very well. But we did have a couple of items when we got the original bids in that we didn't feel we had enough coverage, meaning we only got one vendor to respond to the bid. So we did rebid these couple of items, and we had an opportunity at our committee meeting to have a long discussion on this with Plant Moran available to go through the details with it with the board and make their recommendation resolution. So we did get at least 2 vendor responses for both the traffic light and the wheelchair lift. We are recommending the low bidder for each of those. The construction manager, George Auken Company, has reviewed these, as well as Plant Moran Cressa, and feel that these is good coverage, and these are good vendors to provide that service. You do have the results, $193,200, and you have the revised total budget summary for Franklin High School as well in your packet. So you have, you can add this to your binder for Franklin High School so that you have that all together. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we would recommend that we approve these 2 vendors this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Mrs. Burton.
Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you. Mrs. Abbey, for one thing, I was very pleased that we were able to get Wayne County to move a little quicker on that traffic light.
We are very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. It would not have been a good thing. And it's also a good thing with the wheelchair lift. That's going into the auditorium.
Correct.
Okay. So just on that note, I was just wondering how things were coming along with the Western Wayne Skills Center wheelchair lift.
The lift is there. The lift is being installed, and whether they're done or not, I'm not sure, but they will be before school opens.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and you remember, we do have a portable one that was there and available to students and staff.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah,
but,
good.
yeah.
I just don't want anyone to think we didn't have a lift
Oh, no,
up
no,
there.
no, for sure. But thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other board members who have any questions or comments on this? Alrighty. And I would like to give a special thank you to Paul Terrio from Cressa, and to you, Miss Abby, and to the other LPS staff who may have assisted you in going down to Wayne County repeatedly, from what I understand. And Lansing also, perhaps?
Then we took what we got from Wayne County, and our architect drove that to Lansing to get all of those permitting issues resolved quickly in one day. So that was a lot of in and out, and we really appreciate their due diligence and their hard work and their follow-up on that, and that really just got us right back on track and where we needed to be. So we're very appreciative from this end of all of the professional staff that are working with us.
And I'd like to point out to the public, too, this is one example of where we have utilized the services of an owner's representative above and beyond the normal overseeing of this $195 million bond. Our LPS staff, Ms. Abby was heavily involved, but also with Cressa to go down there and go down to Wayne County when things were not progressing as they should have, and could have had a complete work stoppage had this gone on much further. But we are very, very appreciative of Cressa and of our LPS staff with yourself, Ms. Abby, and those working with you. It could have been a big problem, and this is why we hire the kind of people that we do to get these
They know the
things
right
taken
doors
care
to
of.
knock on, and
Exactly.
they have the phone numbers.
Those are valuable. Artie, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We have a motion by Mrs. Laura, supported by Mrs. McDonald. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Laura.
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald.
Yes.
Mr. Centers.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 7D, approval of interim superintendent as authorized signee with Fifth Third Bank. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve adding Interim Superintendent Andrea Oquist as an authorized signee for Livonia Public Schools accounts with the banking institution Fifth Third Bank.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Ms. Abby, would you like to address this item?
Yes, thank you very much. As we had an opportunity to discuss at our Finance Committee meeting and Committee of the Whole meeting last week, as part of our internal control processes, we do require 2 signatures on our Fifth Third account. So that means when we issue checks out of this account and/or make transfers out of this account, it requires the authorization of 2 people. So as the former superintendent was the authorizer, it makes sense to have Mrs. Oquist on that, so we continue with that internal control of 2 signatures.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Bonnefield.
Mrs. Abby, I'm assuming that this is in place of a prior resolution, so any of the previous signers then that would be taken off and the new resolution will replace.
That's correct, and we have worked with all of our financial institutions to make any of those changes appropriate as of the date of the former superintendent's resignation.
Great.
All of that's been done.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 8A, under Personnel Matters, Teachers for Recall. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. McDonald?
move that the Board of Education accept the recommendation to the superintendent and to recall district employment as teachers for the 2015-16 school years. The persons listed on the attached document dated August 17th, 2015.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. McDonald, supported by Mr. Centers. And Mr. Winery, I believe you're going to be addressing us on this item?
I am.
You're up.
The recall process is in full swing since the board's authorization to commence that process on June 8th. If these 11 recalls are approved, that will leave 9 persons on the 2015 layoff list, 4 from the 2014 list, 2 people from the 2013 list, 1 from the 2012 list, and 1 from the 2010 layoff list. We anticipate further recall from our current list.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All righty. We have a motion by Mrs. McDonald, supported by Mr. Centers. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is 8B, resignations, and this is for informational purposes only, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. The next item is 8C, leaves of absence. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Jarvis.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the request for a leave of absence as listed below for Matthew Sokol, 2015-2016 school year.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mr. Winery, would you like to address this item?
Yes, members of this bargaining unit are entitled to request and be granted leaves of absence by way of their collective bargaining agreement. He meets the requirements for that, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this item? No. We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item number 9, reports from the superintendent. So we will have our first report from our interim superintendent, Andrea Oquist.
Thank you, President Burton. Well, tomorrow we look forward to welcoming back our final group of administrators. Our high school and middle school principals and coordinators have been back, but we welcome back all of our elementary principals tomorrow. And we will have the opportunity, or as we have for many years, to join 5 neighboring districts and all of their administrative leadership teams at the Vista Tech Center, where we will have the opportunity to have a speaker on leadership, share some inspiring messages with all of the district's leaders across those 5 neighboring districts. And then we'll have some time just with our district's administrative leadership team in the afternoon. So we are certainly looking forward to having them all back in the fold. And tomorrow marks the first day for Nijiiro. So we welcome back our students there. As you know, they're on extended school year. And as I shared with you in the update, we are thrilled that in just the second year of existence, we are seeing a 50% increase in enrollment for this year. So Mrs. Burton, we appreciate you being there tomorrow morning to welcome in formally, as is a Japanese tradition, to welcome the kindergarten class to the community.
Be happy to do so.
We're happy to have you there. I also wanted to acknowledge all of the work that our summer maintenance crews have been doing in our schools to ready the schools, the grounds, our offices, et cetera. As you mentioned, I've been part of this district for 25 years, but I actually had a job in the district a bit before that time. And as a 17-year-old was on the summer maintenance crew. And I will never forget those days and the tremendous work that those folks do in the heat and in pretty difficult circumstances. I think you know we have some outstanding leadership out in our maintenance and operations department. We had 3 teams of folks out in each of our schools, and they are itching and ready to go in our final renovated schools. And I just wanted to give a special shout out to all of those folks who get our schools, our classrooms, and our grounds ready for our staff and our kids. So they have been hard at work, and we appreciate that. And Mrs. Abby certainly in the leadership role, coordinating those folks. Finally, since we don't have a televised meeting next week, of course, we have to mention our Back to School, our Bounce Back to School event. The big event to kick off the school year will be next Tuesday, August 25th, from 5 to 8 at Stevenson. All proceeds benefit the LPS Foundation and the wonderful work that they do on behalf of our district. And hold on to your hats, but we are doubling the number of bouncers this year. I know, there's not much more exciting than that. They're adding additional face painters and balloon artists to serve the growing number of participants. Add to that Mr. Archibald will be serving pizza slices, and Dr. Terrio will be scooping snow cones, and it really can't get much better than that. So we hope that all of you will join us out at Stevenson next week from 5 to 8 p.m. for our annual Bounce Back to School. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 10A, second reading of Board Policy KA, Public Relations Program. May I have a motion, please?
President Burden.
Mr. Centers.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for the following. Policy KA, Public Relations Program.
Support.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. And Mrs. Oquist, would you like to address this item?
Yes. I'm going to get that in front of me. Thank you. Excuse me. As you know, thank you. We have, it's part of the Public Relations Program. It is important to us and certainly to the Board of Education that we have an opportunity to hear from folks at community forums. One of the reasons that the district provides this opportunity is so that the board can hear directly from members of community on issues of importance. An example of that most recently would be the budget forums that were held in January. We feel that it is extremely important that to have that more in-depth discussion and have those opportunities from the board. Therefore, some of the feedback that we have gotten and are responding to is that the board wishes to create a safe and welcoming environment for people to share that information with us. Therefore, this policy has been modified, Board Policy KA, that there will be no audio or video recording so that stakeholders may feel free to share their thoughts. So again, these are not formal meetings of the board where we would normally be televising the meetings, such as our committee of the whole or our board meetings. And so because these are community forums and because we are not present with the entire Board of Education deliberating on a topic, we would like to provide the opportunity to have those open channels of communication where all of our community members and our stakeholders have the opportunity to share without any concern of being recorded. So this policy illustrates such.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Zimberg?
Yes, Mr. Centers.
As is often the case with our board, I was in the up in Harbor Springs this week taking some courses from Michigan Association of School Boards, and they actually addressed the issue of having focus groups in your community, and they wanted for us to emphasize in our communities eliminating barriers that could cause people to not share their actual feelings. So this is a good example of that. they were talking about a lot of different things. Putting business leaders along with parents, could intimidate people. But this is certainly an example of how it could keep people from sharing their actual feelings. And if the actual intent of these is to get people to openly share as free as possible, then we should try to strive to remove these barriers. So I thought it was very topical, and I thought I'd wanted to share that best practice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board?
President Burton.
Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you. As I stated at our last meeting when we had our first reading, I am not going to support this evening. I have concerns with the First Amendment rights of individuals, and also for those folks who possibly may not have the opportunity to come to our focus groups, and having a recording then thus would give them the opportunity possibly to view the discussions in our focus groups. So with that, I will not be supporting it. And also, just for future reference, how are we going to determine when it is appropriate and when it is not appropriate for video recording? Just something for discussion.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right. I am supporting this. I feel that it is very, very important for us to not only recognize a few individuals who might want to record private citizens sharing their thoughts for their personal videotaping use. I feel that that desire is overridden by the right of the general public, who do not have to be videotaped. I think it's very, very important that the folks who come to talk to us on a voluntary basis are not subjected to videotaping by other individuals without their permission. For that reason, I am going to be supporting this issue. Again, to reiterate what Mrs. Oquist said, just to be clear, we are not talking about meetings of the Board of Education. When you are an elected member of the Board of Education and you are at a meeting in which there is a quorum present and there is discussion going on or decision being made on public policy, we all put ourselves out for being videotaped. We know that when we sign up. However, this is not that kind of situation. What we're talking about, to be clear, is a community forum when there may be one or two board members present with a small group of private citizens who would like to share their thoughts. We are saying that kind of a setting, we are not going to allow videotaping so that those private citizens have a right to be heard also. I believe it's very, very important to respect the rights of all, not just the rights of a few who want to videotape for their private personal use. For those reasons, I will be supporting this tonight. Mr. Centers.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing, and I think
Go right
you put
ahead.
that very well. I would like to say that if someone is listening and they would like to have their opinion recorded and shared on record, they could come to our Committee of the Whole meetings. They can come to a regular board meeting. Study sessions, again, are not normally videotaped, but if you are someone that wants to have your voice heard on TV, those are the forums for you to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. So we absolutely do provide those opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Centers. Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I was pleased that Mrs. McDonald mentioned the First Amendment rights because freedom of speech is guaranteed us by the Constitution. If a person is feeling intimidated because they had not anticipated being recorded, then in fact their freedom of speech is being infringed, and that's something that we should in fact be aware of.
Very good point. Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Are there others who would like to address this issue? Mr. Johnson.
Yes, with regard to the First Amendment issue, we all have to understand that the First Amendment right is that of the speaker, not of the recorder. It's the person making the statement who has the First Amendment right. No one has a First Amendment right to videotape or audio someone else. That's not freedom of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate the clarification. Are there others who would like to address this issue? Mrs. Bonnefield.
Mrs. Burton, thank you. President Burton, thank you. I've been in one of these situations where we've been in a forum and we've had an individual come in and demand to tape, and they were kind enough to turn their machine off and sit down and participate in the group. But we asked the group, do you want to be videotaped, and it was a response of no for the whole group. I've been in another situation where a group has come into my forum because they were being, basically there was a demand that the group be videotaped, and they left the room and came to my group in order to be heard. So I think just the actions of those individuals that come to the forum speak very loudly that it is not welcomed, that their rights to speak freely are being infringed upon.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. Anybody else like to share thoughts on this issue? Alrighty. We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Thank you. Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
No.
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item number 10B, second reading of Board Policy KN, Public Complaints. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for the following. Policy KN, Public Complaints.
Support.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mr. Centers. Mrs. Oquist, would you like to address this item?
Certainly. It's a relatively straightforward board policy, KN, and the gist of it refers to that the Board of Education it would encourage that complaints are best handled and resolved as close to their origin as possible. So, for instance, starting with the teacher, the principal, et cetera. That the board would act as a final source of appeal for complaints only where specifically required by law or outlined in board policy. The semantics of that final sentence were a bit misleading in that it initially stated or seemed to state that the board would always act as the final source of appeal. And certainly that wouldn't be the case unless outlined or directed to do so in board policy. And so this really just cleans up the semantics of that second sentence, and certainly as it relates to public complaints, again, the focus on it being resolved as close to the problem as possible, and the board acting only in those cases where required by law or board policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this item? No? Alrighty, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mr. Centers. Mrs. Bonnefield, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield says yes. Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 10C, hearing from board members. As is customary for our board, rather than all 7 of us giving comments and a lot of it being repetitive, we ask one individual board member each week to take care of that task for us. Tonight, Mrs. Laura will be speaking for the board. Also, if any other board members have any questions or comments or would like to share anything with the public after Mrs. Laura, by all means, they are welcome to do so. Mrs. Laura.
Thank you, President Burton. On behalf of the school board, I would like to once again thank Mrs. Oquist for stepping up and helping us during our time that we're engaged in a superintendent search. As you all know, she's very competent. She's very dedicated to our district, and we know we're in great hands, and we've already started out a wonderful start of a school year, so thank you. Also, thank you to Mrs. Ellis for a fantastic slide presentation of an update of our 4 summer academic programs. This is a wonderful opportunity, as we're all aware, of our students to work on the skills that they've learned from their previous school year. We approved an important purchase from the bond fund tonight, a wheelchair lift to be used at Franklin, and it will be put in good use. We were also happy to approve the recall of 11 teachers, which is so wonderful to do. We revised 2 policies, public relations and public complaints, and gave them a clear guidelines and definition. As Mrs. Oquist said, summer is coming to an end, and our administrators are in full swing. They've already, a lot of them have gotten started, and the elementary will begin tomorrow. It's hard to believe that summer is ending. The first day of school for students will be Tuesday, September 8th. It's a half day of school for elementary and upper elementary students. And also, as Mrs. Oquist said, don't forget to mark your calendars for our annual Bounce Back to School, which is going to be August 25th. The mission is $5 for school-age students, and the proceeds are used to help the LPS Educational Foundation. It's an excellent, fun event for our children, and it's helping a good cause. So thank you, Mrs. Burton.
Thank you, Mrs. Laura. Are there any other board members who would like to share any thoughts this evening? Just got a couple. Mr. Centers mentioned some classes at MASB that were offered this summer. MASB is the Michigan Association of School Boards, and I'd like the public to know that the vast majority of folks on this board utilize those classes throughout the year. They are very important. I don't know that anyone who comes to this board comes, with the exception of Mrs. Laura, who returned after a hiatus on the board. She came in with some board knowledge. The rest of us came in pretty green. But the MASB offers classes such as school law, school finance, curriculum, technology, a lot of things that the board is responsible for or needs to have some background information on in order to make the decisions that we make. So I would commend our board on taking these classes very seriously and taking their responsibilities seriously to make these decisions in an educated manner. And I encourage us to all 7 of us to continue doing so. As has been my custom during our superintendent search, I would like to give an update on our superintendent search at this point. As we know from this evening, Mrs. Oquist is serving as our interim superintendent, which we are thrilled to have her. Mrs. Oquist has also made it known that she is not interested or able at this point to take that on as a full-time thing, but she's made it clear that she's happy to serve as an interim. Dr. Liepa was appointed the Wayne County recess superintendent, so he does have some opportunity to continue working with Livonia Public Schools in addition to 32 other districts in the county. This board is charged with hiring a superintendent. It is one of the main responsibilities of a Board of Education. We have decided to utilize a search firm in order to bring in experts on this, because for most of us, that'll be the first time we've hired a superintendent. So we thought we better bring some experienced folks in to guide us through this process as best that we can. We interviewed 6 firms, and we hired Michigan Leadership Institute, also known as MLI. We have met as a board and MLI together and developed a calendar. MLI has met with various focus groups throughout the district and has held open community forums to come in and talk to MLI in order to let MLI know and the board know what kinds of characteristics we are looking for in a superintendent. In addition, we have a Talk to Us button on the front page of the Livonia Public Schools website. It's quite prominent. If there's anything that you would like to share about something, quality that we should be looking for in a superintendent, or things that you think are important that a potential superintendent know about our district, we encourage you to go to our website, to hit the Talk to Us button, and your comments could either be with your name or anonymous at your choice. They will go directly to MLI, and MLI will combine them with the others and make sure that every board member is aware of every comment that is made. We are very, very serious about including the thoughts of the community on this process. The job has officially been posted. Applications are being taken through August 28th. This board is going to be devoting a considerable amount of time in the month of September to interviewing and following up with potential candidates for the job, and it is our hope to have a new superintendent seated by sometime during October. If at any point we are not getting the quality of candidates that we feel are important for this position, because it is an extremely important position, we will stop the process and go back over from the beginning again. We are committed to hiring a qualified superintendent who will lead our district well, not simply hiring a superintendent. And we are very, very confident that we will be having a very qualified superintendent in that seat relatively soon. And again, we thank Mrs. Oquist for her service as our interim superintendent during this time period. That is all I have for this evening. Any other board members like to make any other closing comments? We have come to the end of our meeting. We are now adjourned. Thank you for joining us this evening.